This meeting is being held remotely and also in person and will be filmed and recorded for live and subsequent broadcasts available through the Council's website. The Council is a data controller under the General Data Protection Regulations and the Data Protection Act 2018. We broadcast and record Council meetings to fulfil our public task obligation to enable members of the public to observe the democratic process. Data collected during the process will be retained in accordance with Council published policies available through the Council's website. Members of the Council are reminded they should follow the Council's established meeting protocols, including around the use of the chat facility, and that comments made in the chat facility are visible to all participants in the meeting, which may include members of the public who have also received invites to the meeting. Lindsay, would you like to do a roll call?
We have apologies from Councillor Crowther with Councillor Armstrong substituting, Councillor Reynolds with Councillor Curley substituting, Thomas McKenzie and Councillor Flynn. When I move to a roll call, can the following members please indicate if they are present at the meeting, either in person or remotely? Councillor Cassidy.
Present chamber.
Councillor Armstrong.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor Curley.
Present remotely.
Councillor Daisley.
Present remotely.
Councillor Halier.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor Jackson.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor Law.
Present remotely.
Councillor Moran.
In the chamber.
Councillor Wilson.
Present in the chamber.
Are there any declarations of interest?
Thank you. Welcome everybody. We have coming in remotely today, Chief Superintendent Rona Fraser. Welcome, Rona. And also we have Inspector Michael Fletcher, who is a member of the Equality and Diversity Unit, who will be giving us a presentation on hate crime later on. We commence with agenda item number 2, Scottish Fire and Rescue Service Performance Report. Ed, you've moved, Councillor Jackson. I thought you wanted to get a better view of me.
Okay, good afternoon, convener and partnership members. I have the privilege to take up post as local senior officer for East Renfrewshire and Inverclyde in June of this year. This is my first opportunity to meet many of you in person following our early engagement during the online service delivery review back in August. I'm supported today by my Deputy Commander, Group Commander Rod Anderson, who will shortly take you through the Q1 performance report in detail. Before that, I would like to highlight some of the positive partnership work underway in Inverclyde and provide a short update on a significant operational incident that the service attended on the 24th of May 2025. We continue with our partnership approach, working closely with Police Scotland, Inverclyde Council and all other public, private and voluntary sectors of the community to make real progress. Looking ahead, we are re-energised the Anthony Nolan partnership within secondary schools and redesigning our safety education programme to ensure that every primary and secondary school in Inverclyde receives direct engagement from the service throughout the academic year. I would like now to provide a brief overview, if that's okay with yourself, convener, on the Pottery Street warehouse fire that, as I said, took place on the 24th of May 2025. So this, in summary, the incident itself was initially passed as a shed on fire at 10:14 hours on Saturday the 24th of May. And Johnston Operations Control mobilised Foxtrot 01 Papa 1, which is Greenock's first appliance, at 10:16 hours. The appliance was mobilised at 10:18 and arrived on scene at 10:21 hours. At 10:29, an assistance message was sent by the officer in charge requesting to make pumps free. Subsequently, pumps from Port Glasgow, Foxtrot 02 Papa 1 and Greenock on call, Foxtrot 01 Papa 6 arrived on scene at 10:35 and 10:41 hours respectively. A height appliance, Johnston's High Reach, was requested at 10:47 and arrived at the incident at 11:13 So to set the scene, there's a large warehouse refuse shed fully involved in fire, with approximately 70 tonne of general waste, 50 tonne of timber, and the high reach was on scene, but we did encounter difficulties in regards to our water supply. Scottish Water were unable to boost the supply, and all personnel were accounted for in the early stages of the incident. Notable hazards that crews came across was the building construction. This was steel frame building with integrity concerns due to compromised concrete panels. This was confirmed by building control. A JCB that was stored within the vicinity, and 2 100-litre diesel tanks contained within the warehouse itself, and the smoke plume, which caused significant challenges due to the wind direction, which was west-southwesterly towards the Clyde. Priorities, as always, for the Scottish Fire Rescue Service is safety of our crews, public and partner agencies. The tactics that were deployed that day were external firefighting only due to the serious risk of structural collapse. The incident was sectorised with a water sector established and road closure approved to access water across the A8 roadway and due to structural risk as well. One of our resources, a high volume pump, was considered, but an additional ring main was identified and this was used instead. As we progressed through the incident, additional water ring main was accessed, the high reach and ground monitors were deployed, and the road partially reopened, which would allow transport in and out of the area once the fire was under control. Health and safety was an absolute paramount, and that was put in place with Incident Commander, along with public health and the council, and that was to provide a greater understanding of the level of risk and also supported our multi-agency meetings. Fire had significantly reduced by 1,800 hours that day. External firefighting continued due to the structural concerns, and at that time it was reduced to 1 pump overnight, and the roads fully opened at approximately 18:30 hours that night as well. The final phase, which was the following morning on the 25th, the fire was reduced to deep-seated pockets only. Building control confirmed to the site was safe to enter. Council supported the closing stages with an excavator used to remove the excess waste, and a stop message was passed back at 10 o'clock in the morning. This incident demonstrated effective multi-agency coordination and robust risk management, with firefighter and public safety remaining our absolute priority throughout. Looking forward, our focus remains on delivering positive outcomes for our communities, with prevention and partnership at the heart of our report. At this point, Chair, I'm happy to answer any questions in relation to the operational incident, and further to that, I could hand over to my colleague, Group Commander Rod Anderson, who can present Q1 report in more detail.
Thank you, Ed. It seems as though everybody moved pretty promptly to get there.
Yep.
From the minute the alarm was raised. Could I ask you, I noticed in the report from the council, they kind of took a stab that it might have been some form of electrical equipment that had caused the fire. Do we have any reason to know what caused it?
In regards to that, and I reached out to the original Incident Commander, who's not actually located within or doesn't work within the LSO area. His response would be that CCTV imagery captured from the scene would indicate that there's a potential that the fire was actually started with a mobile CAD device in relation to a vape, in regards to a small lithium battery.
Thank you.
That's what we're kind of looking at just now.
That was what our officers were suggesting it might have been, but they had no concrete evidence.
No, and I think it'd be really, really difficult due to the investigation afterwards to try to identify a cause. It is really difficult due to the amount of waste that was involved, the removal, and trying to preserve that scene at the same time. So with looking at that information, then that would be the best kind of determination of the cause of the fire itself.
Thank you for that report, Ed. I think it's important my colleagues hear what happens in an event like that. Do we have any questions for Ed? I don't see any online and none in the room. Rob?
Thank you, convener. So I'd like to present to you the scrutiny report for quarter 1 of 2025-26 for the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service. We can take section 1. As can be seen within the summary, there were a total of 507 incidents in Inverclyde during quarter 1 of 2025-26. This was up from 311 incidents over the same period in the previous year, an increase of 63%. This included a 150% increase in fire incidents, a 9% increase in special service incidents, and a 12% increase in false alarms. As we go through the remaining sections, they'll provide some more detail about this. In section 2, looking at the trends, from this quarter, section 2 has now been expanded to 2 pages and provides graphs which illustrate the trends across Inverclyde over the last 4 years for all performance indicators that we report on. Up until last quarter, the new report only included a single page, it only covered 5 out of the indicators, so it now covers all and shows those 4 yearly trends. To move into the body of the report and accidental dwelling fires, this quarter we're reporting a decrease in accidental dwelling fires from 13 in the same quarter last year to 12 this year, which equates to a reduction of 7%. Well, the dwelling fires in Inverclyde this quarter, again, acute compliance was recorded as being the most common source of ignition, accounting for 8 out of 12 incidents. This is in line with both the historic trend in Inverclyde and with the trend that we see nationally across Scotland. The table also highlights that most of the accidental dwelling fires were small in nature and either resulted in no appreciable fire damage or were limited to the item which first ignited. Our operational crews continue to conduct post-domestic incident responses following any incident in their dwelling, and supported by our community action team continue to provide home fire safety advice and guidance to the community, as well as carrying out home fire safety visits to reduce occurrences of accidental dwelling fires. In terms of accidental dwelling fire casualties, this quarter we are reporting an increase in accidental dwelling fires accidental dwelling fire casualties, with 2 compared to 0 in the same period the previous year. Both casualties were removed to hospital, one with slight injuries. Our ongoing community safety engagement activities across Inverclyde incorporate those which are specifically targeted at reducing accidental dwelling fires and the associated casualties. As was mentioned in relation to accidental dwelling fires, this includes post-domestic incident response, a home fire safety visit programme, and our education engagement syllabus. In terms of non-fire casualties, this quarter we're reporting a 12.5% increase in the year-on-year indicator for non-fire casualties, with a total of 9. This is up from 8 in the same period last year. In this quarter, 5 casualties were because of road traffic collisions, 2 were incidents involving SFRS assisting another agency, and 2 were as a result of other special service incidents. Through our close working with our partners, we continue to engage and try to reduce non-fire casualties by delivering road and water safety messaging and engagement within our communities across Inverclyde, reinforcing those same messages. In terms of deliberate fires, quarter 1 2025-26, we have to report an increase of 154% in deliberate fires within Inverclyde, with a total of 242 compared to 95 in the same quarter last year. As can be seen from the graph illustrating the trend over the last 4 years, the number of deliberate fires across Inverclyde has been relatively low, with clear spikes in some quarters. This reduction has been a result of the close partnership working between SFRS, Inverclyde Council, Police Scotland and our other partners. Of the 242 deliberate fires across Inverclyde during this period, 198 involved grassland, woodland and crops, equating to 82% of all deliberate fires. The spike in the number of fires within this category was likely driven by the fact that in this quarter the UK had its driest and warmest spring on record, resulting in grass and vegetation being dry and readily ignitable. We continue working with our local partners and SFRS continues to work to reduce the levels of deliberate fire setting and fire-related antisocial behaviour that we have across the Inverclyde area. Non-domestic fires. This quarter we attended 4 fires in non-domestic premises. This was an increase of 3 in the same period last year, which equates to a 200% increase in this type of incident. All these incidents were accidental in origin, and where the premises involved were relevant premises under the Fire Scotland Act 2005, we will receive a post-fire audit by our fire safety enforcement team. This ensures legislative compliance, as well as providing the opportunity to provide fire safety advice and guidance to the responsible persons, and for them to ask any questions of our subject matter experts with the intention of augmenting any chances of a reoccurrence of these incidents. Within East Renfrewshire, Renfrewshire and Inverclyde, our community action team have a 3-year rolling programme where we will visit and engage with all of our sheltered accommodation across all 3 of the local authorities in order to deliver fire safety input to the residents. As 3 of these incidents in Inverclyde occurred within that property type, the community action team are now specifically targeting sheltered housing accommodation within Inverclyde for visits to provide both fire safety advice and reassurance to the residents following the 3 incidents within that property type across the local authority area. Unwanted fire alarm signals. Although we continue to see a reduction in unwanted fire alarm signals following a change in policy, through our UFAS champion and operational crews, we continue to engage with all duty holders to provide advice and guidance in relation to automatic fire alarms and means of preventing unwanted actuations. This is a key part of our UFAS procedure, as in the majority of UFAS incidents, actuation is a result of some form of human interaction. And in this quarter, as I mentioned at the start of this, the reduction continues, and we've gone from 36 in the same period last year to 23 this year, which is a decrease of 36%. And that decrease is in line both with the trend across Inverclyde since the introduction of our new UFAS policy and also the national trend of UFAS incidents following that policy change. Road traffic collisions. We are reporting a 50% increase in road traffic collisions attended in Inverclyde in the period covered by this report, going from 10 in the same period last year to 15 this year. As a result of these RTCs, there were 6 casualties who attended hospital with slight injuries and a further person who was uninjured as a result of their road traffic collision. And as such, they were recorded as a rescue only rather than casualty. As the graph illustrates, over the last 2 years, Inverclyde has had 10 or less road traffic collisions per quarter, so 15 is a considerable spike. And in order to address that, we continue to deliver our road safety education to all driver groups within the community across Inverclyde in conjunction with our local partners, and particularly East Scotland. In terms of our home fire safety activity, quarter 1 of 2025-26 is the wrong bit. No, we are home fire safety visits. 2025-26 across quarter 1, our operational crews within Inverclyde and our community action team have carried out 56 home fire safety visits. With the new qualifying criteria introduced by the change to our home fire safety visit policy and procedure, all these visits were carried out in households who are considered to be at high risk of fire. Home fire safety visits continue to play a key part in our wider community safety engagement activities across Inverclyde, which forms a key work stream of both our operational crews and our community action team, with the aim of reducing accidental dwelling fires, their associated casualties, and making the communities of Inverclyde safer. Our fire safety enforcement officers and protection officers covering Inverclyde conducted 12 routine fire safety audits on relevant premises during this quarter. On top of this, they also carried out 14 specific visits to premises and 3 consultations in response to complaints, queries or intelligence received from partners. This contributes to maintaining community safety in non-relevant domestic premises by allowing us to, where necessary, audit, or where it's felt the better approach to engage with the responsible persons and to educate and guide them on the requirements they need to meet in order to ensure that they are legislatively compliant and maintain safety within their premises. And the last page on community safety engagement, I will not go through the list in detail, but this section 12 box just gives a small snapshot of the work that our community safety engagement activities that our crews are carrying out alongside our community action team across Inverclyde each quarter. These activities can be routine activities, for example, work to reduce accidental dwelling fires and associated casualties, or they could be targeted in response to identifying a trend in incident types, or as part of our seasonal thematic action plans, which are aimed at addressing the prevalent risks across those seasons based on our historical incident data. And that is what is there is a very small snapshot that I've just cherry picked from the list of activities that they do, just to give a kind of idea of what it is that they do on a day-to-day basis out there across our communities. And that concludes my report. I'm happy to take questions or comments.
Thank you, Rod. I'm particularly impressed by a glossary of terms at the end. A number of committee meetings I go to, and I get perplexed by the terms. Do we have any questions for Rod or for Ed? Councillor Moran.
Aye, thanks, Convener. Yeah, a very good report, I have to say. And we're back to, the fires, on the grassland and losing the crops. You said yourself it's the hottest summer and bring a record. Going forward, are we adapting to this climate change? Because next week it might be the West record, So are we adapting to this? Is the service, are we providing enough training for this new development, this global warming, which is taking over our whole life at the moment, you know what I mean? And would it be use of technology, or would it be better equipment for the guys in the front line? So it's just a reassurance that you're on top of this and you're expecting to deal with anything that crops up.
Thank you, Rod. We do have we've got a group called the New and Emerging Risk Group, and this is the things that they're looking at. They're looking at things like battery energy storage sites, lithium-ion battery risks, and alongside that, they also look at the potential impacts of climate change. So they also oversee our wildfire response and also our flooding or water scarcity planning as well. So within that, last year the service spent several £million investing in wildfire and firefighting equipment. So we have bought lighter weight firefighting kit for our specialist wildfire response stations. Ultimately, the service would like to roll that out to all our personnel, but it's just about the financial investment involved. That'll have to happen over a period of time. So they've started by targeting those who will initially be the specialist wildfire responders. Alongside that, the wildfire response stations have been provided with all-terrain vehicles and a four-wheel drive Ford Ranger, which stores the trailer on which the all-terrain vehicles carry to the incident. And we've also bought a fleet of 4x4 vans with high ground clearance, which basically carry additional wildfire equipment. Training, yes, we're investing in training as well. So we've progressed from the days where all we used were beetles and a hose reel to deal with wildfires. We've now progressed to where we are now doing backburns. We're carrying specialist equipment, for example, adapted leaf blowers, which allow us to extinguish the fire using high pressure air. And also they've invested in more specific wildfire hand tools that are used in countries like Australia, US and Canada, where wildfires are much more prevalent. So we've all of them, and we're investing in the training to train our personnel up to utilise those. And likewise, on the flip side of it, if it does turn out to be the wettest, yes, we are investing also in our water rescue response. So we increased our water rescue response for the last few years, but we continue to invest in that water rescue response and training to ensure that we're continuing to keep on top of it. And as I say, the New and Emerging Risk Group, the working party within there, looking at specifically the climate change-driven incident types. They're very much all over this and looking at where we're going to be now, where we need to be in 5 years' time, and potentially where we need to be in 10 years' time, etc., down the line, and what we need to be doing to prepare for that.
Yeah, thanks so much. That's really reassuring. You just imagine the guys up with the big brooms, the smoke would really choke.
Thank you. We're still doing that. It's still not a place, but we're still doing it.
Thank you. What's really assured of that.
That's what the trainees get. A very comprehensive answer. Tell me, all that kit you're talking about, where is it kept?
Yeah, so they're located strategically across Scotland. So the two closest to us are Coinning and Dumbarton.
Right.
There were two specialists. As I say, we still carry beetles, and everybody is still trained in wildfire firefighting, so everybody's at the basic wildfire response training, and there's a new training package in those are not specialist responders. But the specialist response with the all-terrain vehicles, that's your two closest to here is Dumbarton and Corinne. But we do have them spread all over Scotland.
Thank you.
From the islands and also in the mainland.
Very good answer. Councillor Jackson and then Councillor Curley.
Thanks, Chair. Firstly, I should take the opportunity to thank them for the work they've done on 40th Street. I realise how dangerous it was. I missed the opportunity to say that. So just
Well said. Well said.
I'm looking at the figures here, David. If you just indulge me a wee minute, I'm glad that they're taking over a longer timeline. Normally, when we get a short timeline, you can maybe misread information, don't you? But with one the consultations going ahead, apologise for me, take us a minute ago. Just, I'm looking at deliberate fires, and we're told in the report there's been a 73% increase. Okay, we're looking at across the graphs here, deliberate fires, there's been a 324% increase. Yeah. Non-domestic fires, 100% increase. Now, I understand that's a smaller number, in a percentage, it's kind of skewed. Road traffic collisions, 150% increase. Road traffic collisions, 100% increase. The only area where we seem to be falling, and it's a steep fall, is home fire safety visits went, sorry, I'll look at my glasses, so from 241 in 2021 down to 50 in 2025. That's a significant drop in home fire safety visits. Fire safety audits, again, I'm glad it's a longer timeline, but it just shows there's not really been much change in that. The reason I'm saying this, I'm welcoming the longer timeline from 21 to 25 is the consultation is based on the Community Risk Index modelling, which tells us that the risks in Inverclyde over the years have dropped significantly. But going with the data in this, it just doesn't seem to bear that out. Deliberate fires, 324% increase. Road traffic accidents, 150% increase. Home safety visits, again, a massive fall. Safety visits. I think it would have been misobvious, Chair, if I sat here and didn't point out these anomalies.
No, I think I get the gist.
Yeah, that's in front of us in this report and what the figures are for being given in the consultation. And I know it's not an answer we'll get from yourself. These decisions are taken at a higher level, but it must concern these. It really must concern these commission members, because there's other members in here and members of the public. We have services at the weekends at Glasgow. If the consultation goes ahead, we're going to go into a Monday to Friday and a evening weekend service, which is by retained firefighters, in no disrespect to retained firefighters. But we know there's a challenge in recruiting firefighters, and we also know from the consultation that the time between a full-time firefighter responding, which is 3 minutes, for a reserve firefighter responding, which could be anywhere between 8 and 11 minutes, is a massive time difference. So given the fact that we've seen a massive rise in some areas, or if no rise, there's just been a consistently flat line from 21 to 25, how we could possibly support these cuts to the fire service. And the question again is a consistent recruit is, are you comfortable with these cuts and changes, given the information in your own report is going to make Inverclyde any safer? So,
Yeah, gentlemen, you put your argument very well, Councillor Jackson.
Thanks, Councillor. Yeah, so just in terms of the figures in its relation to the CRIM, as you say, this is a 4-year time frame we're looking at here. The CRIM looked at 30 years of incident data. So it's a far bigger pool looking at those trends over a longer period of time. And that's based on that is where they're taking their decisions on what models maybe the ones they want to go for. As you say, looking at the trend over 4 years, you can see there are peaks and there are troughs, but that's natural. If you look at across the 30 years, it's exactly the same. So they've basically done 30 years worth of data to come up with the potential options that decided to put forward. In terms of the home fire safety visits, so the reason we had to drop on home fire safety visits is because we are now, because of the change to the criteria to qualify for it, we've moved away from that universal provision of if you ask for a home fire safety visit, you get one. So it's now looking at those who are most at risk of fire. So you have to hit much tighter criteria to get home fire safety visit in order to make sure we're getting the most vulnerable in our communities who are most likely to be at risk of fire. So that's why the numbers have dropped off. So it should be more a case of we're now getting quality home fire safety visits and that we're getting the people that we should be getting, rather than that being diluted by delivering them to the entire population as a blanket approach. As I say, we still provide that home fire safety advice and guidance to those who don't meet the criteria for home fire safety visit. They just don't get a physical home fire safety visit with a crew, or the community actually will go out and visit them at their house and do that risk assessment process that we did previously. That's done effectively self-done when you apply for a home fire safety visit now. So that's why that has tapered off. Fire safety audits, again, they've stayed very much steady, because they will be steady. We have certain premises within the area that meet the criteria for auditing under Plan Scotland Act, and there's very little change in that. So every year we do roughly the same number of audits every year, and because of the cycle of visiting them that's required, whether it be a yearly, a 3-yearly, or a 5-yearly visit required under the Plan Scotland Act.
Councillor Church?
Yeah, it's just on the Crown, which you said is the most community risk index modelling. It is suggested that this way of modelling for the cuts is not the best. Not the best way, the best model for doing it. I mean, if it's okay, if I can quote from one of the senior fire brigades in the says, the crime is not.
It's good to hear it from you and not the Telegraph.
Well, one of your main fire brigade union officers who represents all your firefighters, he's quoted saying that the way of justifying the cuts is not about improving services. It will never suggest more firefighters or stations or better pay. It's always about cuts and trying to find a way to justify them. I suppose it just goes with that, David, and thank you for your answer.
No, I think you put your arguments very well. The problem that the police and the fire service are faced with is 10 years of cuts to their money and their manpower. In both cases, they're about 1,000 down over 10 years in manpower, and that has an ongoing effect. But you put your argument very, very concisely, and Rod, I think you answered it well. Thank you. Councillor Curley?
Thank you, David. Second. A couple of points. So I'll stay away from the what do you call it? Some of the issues have been raised already, which is good to see. With respect to the issues about vapes, I note obviously the comments about the fire at the recycling centre, and we will never know exactly maybe what I've picked up. Never know exactly.
What page are we on, Chris? What page are we
just
on?
a general comment about the vapes and about the cause of the fire at Portray Street,
Right.
which is the very beginning, I think. It was initial.
It is. Yeah.
So obviously, comment is that we obviously won't know what sort of caused that in particular, but the thinking is it might have been a small lithium-ion battery related to a vape, etc. Obviously, that sort of material shouldn't be making itself into the general refuge because it should be controlled elsewhere. So I'm just wondering, would there be any steps taken with respect to that for public information and highlighting the fact that these items should be recycled as opposed to deposited within the general refuge?
Now, is that a fire issue or a council issue?
Probably a comment on a bit of both, really, I think.
Right, okay.
So from a fire service point of view, yes, our information that we give out on safety around lithium-ion batteries does include information around about safe disposal, and that they should go not into general waste, but they should go to electrical waste recycling, for the simple reason that they are probably the most likely cause of most fires that we get in recycling centres is some form of lithium-ion battery-powered device that's been disposed of into general waste. And that seems to be becoming a more common trend across the UK and Europe-wide. So our education is around not just safe use and charging of the vapes, but also the safe disposal of them is within our information. But obviously beyond that, it's with our remit. There's only so much we can do to educate the public about how to dispose of them. It's then obviously then it's on to how they then get disposed of in the process from there.
Thank you, Rod. Ruth, does your team wish to comment?
Just to stay with my other hat on for the education hat, I know you attended the vape roadshows as well, so there's education for the young people going on. But I would think it would be environment regeneration probably would have a view on anything else.
Right, we'll lob it on to them, eh? Thank you, Chris, for that question. Ed?
Thank you very much for that, convener. Just to highlight as well in my introduction, I did highlight that our schools engagement programme was getting re-established, not re-established, it was redesigned, and vapes is very much on the programme in regards to both primary and secondary school children.
Thank you, Ed. I see nobody else on screen, nobody in the chamber. Move on to agenda item.
Sorry, David, another question, sorry.
Oh, right. I thought your hand went, oh, there it is, yes.
No.
Right ahead, Chris.
So just with respect to the wildfires, obviously, there's a comment about them being deliberate, and obviously there's sort of evidence that it gets worse when when the climate is particular, or the weather is particularly dry. I just wondered if there's any sort of understanding. I know they're being put down as all being deliberate. Are we basically saying that that even if the weather had been particularly good, if it wasn't for the deliberate setting of these fires, there'd be far less fires. And in actual fact, the immediate cause isn't the change in the weather, but the immediate cause is the needing a change in behaviour of people who are actually going onto the grasslands, etc. So it is actually this deliberate act of fire raising that's still the issue. If the grass had been there naturally, it hadn't reached a point that it would actually have caught fire. It's really this deliberate action that we need to sort of address.
Thank you, Rod.
Thanks for that. Thanks for the question, Councillor. So much as the weather plays a factor and influence in how many of these type of incidents we get, it is ultimately the majority of wildfires and general grass and woodland crop fires we get are of deliberate ignition. So yes, it is more that the deliberate ignition is what causes them. There will be a small percentage of them that are down to either natural occurrences or accidental. And so you will get sparks flown from a distance from barbecues, sparks from vehicles, particularly farming vehicles, etc. Can cause some accidental ones, lightning strikes, things like that. But the vast majority, there is some form of human interaction causing the ignition and leading to the wildfires.
Okay with that, Chris?
No, that's fine. Thank you, David.
Okay, thank you. I see no lights. I see nothing on the screen. We move on to agenda item number 3, Police Scotland Performance Report. Chief Inspector Docherty.
I think, convener, if you can all hear me okay.
Oh, Rona, I do apologise. I demoted you there very suddenly. Please fire ahead.
No, that's fine. I do apologise that I'm not there in person today. But I will start by giving you our overview of the report, which you will see is for the period to the end of June 2025, with some positive and equally some more challenging areas for not just ourselves, but some of our partners, including those around the table today. In terms of incident and demand, crimes and offences in Inverclyde have increased by 12% to just over 1,500, which is consistent with the national trend. Overall police incidents have decreased by almost 6% to 4,300. A majority of incidents, that's around 80%, reported to police did not result in a crime being recorded, with a large proportion of those police incidents centring around vulnerabilities, welfare concerns or ensuring public safety. 4 of our 8 crime groups saw a rise, including sexual crimes, crimes against society, antisocial issues and road traffic offences. However, non-sexual crimes of violence, crimes of dishonesty, crimes of damage and reckless behaviour and miscellaneous offences have all decreased. The overall detection rate for crimes in Inverclyde just now is just below 69%, an increase from the last year and higher than the national average. Officers are performing well, as you will hear, but there is still obviously some room for improvement, and we will certainly not be complacent in those statistics. In terms of violence, disorder and antisocial behaviour, overall violent crime has decreased by just over 8% compared to the previous year, with a total of 201 recorded crimes. The main reason for this decrease was a reduction in assault on emergency workers. While there was a slight increase in serious assaults with 18 reported crimes, youth violence has fallen by a third. Domestic abuse continues to be a key factor, with around a third of common assaults and a quarter of robberies having a domestic element attached to them. Complaints about disorder in Inverclyde have increased by 9% to just over 600 reported incidents. However, within those crimes, those related to damage and reckless behaviour dropped by nearly a fifth, and a number of overall willful fire-raising incidents fell to just 6, with vandalism also falling by 14%. Clearly a key theme is protecting those vulnerable individuals within our community, and during this reporting period, Inverclyde recorded a total of 36 hate crimes with a detection rate of 53%, and race is the most commonly targeted characteristic, accounting for 42% of the recorded incidents. And we will hear shortly from Michael, who's on the line from our Policing Together division, who will provide us a bit more information in relation to hate crimes and incidents. There were 63 missing person reports involving 45 individuals, which is a 17% increase from the same period last year. Of those reported missing, 59% were children, with a large proportion of those children being care experienced. Domestic abuse incidents decreased by 9% over the past year, with 201 incidents recorded, 41 of those being recorded resulting in a crime. The most common crimes, common assault or threatening and abusive behaviour. Moving on to acquisitive and cyber, Inverclyde recorded a 5% decrease in crimes of dishonesty, totalling 325 incidents, which contrasts with the national increase. The detection rate for these crimes is just under 50%, surpassing the national rate of 35%. Housebreaking crimes fell by over a quarter, with just 17 incidents reported. And although fraud continues to be identified as a key threat in Inverclyde due to those ever-evolving methods used by fraudsters, recorded crimes have fallen by over 9% on last year's figures. And while theft by shoplifting fell by nearly 10% on the previous year, it is still responsible for half of all crimes of dishonesty, with 169 crimes recorded. Repeat offenders continue to be an issue within that crime group, and over 60% of offenders are charged for multiple offences in this reporting period. Our retail task force, our national retail task force, is engaged with local officers and national retailers here in Inverclyde to provide prevention advice and look for opportunities to target, harden and make a dent in that significant number. Cyber-enabled crime has also decreased by nearly 11% on the previous year, with 57 recorded crimes. Moving on to road safety. During the reporting period, Inverclyde recorded 5 road traffic casualties, a substantial decrease from the previous year, and there are a total of 319 road traffic offences, nearly a 40% increase from the previous year's figures, and I'm glad to say that this is mainly due to an increased level of proactivity amongst local officers and support from our roads policing colleagues in the area. Largely driven by our new road safety governance group locally, which has a regular eye on performance within that area. This has led to significant increases in various offences, including speeding, careless driving, vehicle defects and mobile phone offences. And finally, I'm pleased to say that we've recently welcomed, just on Monday, a further 2 probationers to Inverclyde, and they will be followed by further officers who have just joined the college as of last week, and we will welcome them here towards the end of the year. I know that's always very positively received within the community in terms of the numbers that we have here in Inverclyde. And that concludes my report. I'm very happy to take any further questions from the room or online.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rona. I look around the room. I don't see anything. Councillor Cassidy.
Thank you, Chair. Chief Superintendent, you'll be aware back in July, raised in the Telegraph about closure of the custody facilities at Greenock, and just this week we found out the custody facilities are closed again for what we're told will be 9 days. Now, under a Freedom of Information request that I obtained since 2015, because Police Scotland doesn't hold any data for 2014, there has been 308 closures of custody suite at Greenock. Of those closures, 231 for staff absences. Now, if we add in the additional closures this week, that will take it to 368, with 291 of those closures due to staff absences. Now, that paints to me there's a big picture around staffing issues rather than what sometimes we're always led to believe it's an issue with the custody facilities themselves in terms of the condition that they're in. Now, since looking at data since 2021, the highest number of closures was, we had the highest number of closures in 2021, sorry, with 81. In 2025, we are now 21 below that for this year. There's still a couple of months to go in this year, so potential that that could increase again. And since 2021 onwards, the closure, there's been increasing frequency, the number of closures, predominantly down to staff absences. Now, to me, that paints a kind of worrying picture that there is a massive staffing issue within Police Scotland, either it's within Police Scotland or it's in this division. So what is the case? Is it a staffing issue within the division? Is it a staffing issue within the force itself?
Chief Superintendent Rona, I've got your title right this time. Do you want to handle this, or will I let David handle it?
No, it's okay. I'm fine to take it. Thank you. Yes, and I do appreciate your concerns in this regard, because I understand that the implication is that if we have a closure within the custody suite in Greenock, that officers are spending more time travelling to custody suites that are further away, and I do appreciate that would be interpreted as time lost or time away from the communities of Inverclyde. And I'd probably like to provide some reassurance in that regard first, and that whenever there are any shortages, and I'm seeing shortages, but movements of resources away from Inverclyde, we are flexible in that we will be able to move those from Renfrewshire in the first instance, or anywhere further afield in terms of national resources to be able to supplement what is missing in Inverclyde. And I'm very confident in just our C3 colleagues, but also our PICs, our inspectors on the ground, to be able to manage that resourcing picture, which they have done very well over the last few days. The decision to close custody, the most recent decision to close custody, has been an operational decision based on staff shortages. I can confirm that, because it is incredibly important that we have the safety and security of prisoners taken into custody within Greenock, but also the staff that are working there. So we really cannot operate when there are any sickness, absence, or any other shortages that may cause a knock-on effect in that regard. So yes, I do appreciate the concerns. However, we do work very hard to try and combat those and make sure that we have a fully fit and healthy workforce out there to answer the calls within the community. And I know that, you know, that maybe doesn't fully reassure you in relation to the state of this year, when you're providing me the stats that were 25 below those from the levels that you saw in 2021 in terms of closures. But we are working very close with custody to try and prevent as many closures as we can. and I'm more than happy to assist in that partnership arena to do so, because quite like you, I'm also concerned. However, I do know that we have a number of other mechanisms at our disposal to make sure that the service that the community is receiving is not in any way detrimentally impacted.
Chief Superintendent, can I, just before I bring in Councillor Elliott and perhaps Paul for another one, tell me, you said it was an operational decision to close the custody suite. Is the custody staff separate from the staff here in Greenock?
Yes, that's right. So custody staff are under our criminal justice division. So they are not line managed by myself. They are a national unit. So they will move staff between various custody centres to be able to allow them to stay open for as long as possible. But sometimes decisions have to be made to make closures in particular areas when really staffing levels are not of a level that are safe enough to operate or within our procedures. So no, they don't come under myself. They're not local officers. They are, while they might operate in the local area, they are staff from a national division.
Thank you. I understand that. So if the custody suite in Greenock closes, that's not a decision by Chief Inspector Doherty, is it?
No, that wouldn't be his decision. We would be notified. There are occasionally opportunities for us to assist them, but what that comes down to is training, and it's not just training, it's actually operational competence. So you need to be doing a job to be competent in it. So often we can't even influence those decisions because we do not have the staff to provide them to us who are suitably trained in the area of custody. So no, it's completely out with our control. However, we do try and work very closely with them to manage it in terms of timing and demand and what that might look like for us.
Thank you, Chief Superintendent. Councillor Cassidy, do you want another one?
Yeah, I appreciate that answer, Chief Superintendent. But I think for me, you talk about you can move resources from other places to help cover Inverclyde. I think these figures point to me that probably is not the case. It's happening, and I mean, you spoke about officers being out with Inverclyde, for particularly long periods of time, transporting prisoners to various different custody facilities, which is something I've raised before. And interestingly, I did ask Police Scotland what was the operational costs for this to the taxpayer, and shockingly, Police Scotland said that you didn't hold that type of information, which I find quite frankly surprising. And I can imagine it's going to be thousands of pounds, and it'll be hundreds of hours lost at police in Inverclyde, with the fact that it's not just simply transporting the prisoner. There's prisoners with particularly mental health issues that potentially have to take prisoners to hospital for medical assessment. So quite frankly, it paints a worrying picture, for me in Inverclyde when it comes to custody facility, and officers have been out with this area for a particular length of time. And I appreciate that in terms of custody, that's not within your scope and within the Chief Inspector scope. I appreciate that's a national area, but to me, I'm not confident in Police Scotland's ability to handle custody facilities in Inverclyde alone.
No, I understand where you're coming from, but there ain't too much they can do here locally if that's a national setup. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Convener, through yourself. Yeah, I mean, I'm also concerned what Councillor Cassidy just said. I'm thankful for Chief Superintendent Fraser's comments. I'm more concerned about the logistics of the matter, having possibly spent the last 2 days and quite lengthy phone calls with the Police Federation and the Area West Federation officer. And his words are basically that he is gravely concerned. And if we hear that from the Police Federation, that they're gravely concerned, then I think we can look at it right through the whole scenario, which was spoken to. And I appreciate from the convener and to yourselves that this is a national item. I also think it's now the time that brought together that, and we've got a decision as to why it's happening and how we're going to stop it in the future. Because this is obviously what the Federation say is of grave concern. My set of logistics of the matter probably looks at everything in detail. And as much as the Chief Superintendent Fraser says we can bring resources from different areas, I would question how you can do that maybe at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, when in fact we've got resources that are now limited and have moved away to different custody suites. As my colleague says here, Councillor Cassidy, that the sales have been closed. I believe that's extended into next week. I've also believed to have received information that Clydebank custody cell was closed as well. So you'll get the impact that of now you've got people travelling, officers and detainees travelling from this area to Govan, where you're going to be in the midst of a city centre custody suite. And you only don't need to imagine too much how much that would involve. Just a couple of points here. I just want to bring it to the fore because the Federation has asked me to, and I think it's very relevant that people of Inverclyde also know what's going on here. They need to know that they're being policed safely and correctly at all times. And I appreciate that the police officers in all instances, on all levels, are doing their level best. So this is never ever a criticism of police officers, because they are being stretched as other resources are locally in different services. First of all, just a couple of logistics, convener, if you would allow me. First of all, we've got the travel times. So let's assume we're going to Govan. Let's assume we're stuck in the roadworks which are at Hillington. Let's assume that that's another 30 minutes minimum travel time. When you've got detainees in that police vehicle who are vulnerable, they may be agitated, they may be under the influence of drink or drugs, or they may be needing assistance. It could be medical. They are stuck in a police vehicle, the police officers are on board, and they have nowhere to go. They can maybe try and get the lights to get through, but eventually you just get into the traffic jam. So to me, that situation is just unacceptable. Also, the officers may need assistance. How do they get assistance? How do officers who are local get assistance when their colleagues have moved out of town? Looking at the impact on the community as well, if we have officers stuck in Glasgow in a community custody cell, in a custody cell, then that car is out of the area, difficult to get it back. So I think overall, conveners, an overall concern, it significantly reduces community safety. It puts community officers and police officers under extensive, strenuous circumstances. And I would probably ask through yourself, convener, that we have a meeting with the council officers and the senior police officers, including very much our local officers who are doing an excellent job, to get this rectified and to understand where we go from here, because next time is going to be the next time. And I would ask that we can maybe organise that and to have that put through as a recommendation. Thanks.
Thank you for that. I certainly think we need to be careful here who we are taking this up with. First protocol, because it's a national operation, should be Police Scotland, and following on from that, the Scottish Government. That's our 2 ports of call. Ruth, what do you think?
I was just taking some advice from.
Yes, I'm not sure that that's something that would be within the gift of this scrutiny panel. So yeah, I wouldn't be confident of what you're recommending. The convener would be appropriate.
Well, I recommend.
Yes, what's been suggested.
Say that again? Are you saying it's appropriate or inappropriate?
It would be inappropriate, I think, for this panel to make that recommendation. I think it would be out with the scope of this panel in terms of our scheme of delegation.
Now, okay, then if we are wanting to consult, who should we consult with? We should consult with Police Scotland, because it's a national operation.
See, Rona wants to come in.
Rona?
Yeah, I was just going to come in on a couple of the points there that were raised, and obviously the door's always open for discussions with the Federation, both in custody division or CJSD division and locally. They do try very hard not to close Clydebank and Greenock at the same time, just for reassurance in terms of the options and options for travel, should there be anything disrupting any of the routes there. And if there are detainees requiring medical assistance, it wouldn't be appropriate for us to be taking them straight to custody anyway. So again, just for reassurance around some of our more vulnerable detainees. And certainly I'll continue to engage and have those discussions and feedback on what the longer term strategic plan is around the estates piece, because as you'll all be aware, you know, it links in heavily in terms of how many custody suites we have, where they're located, and what the staffing model looks like going forward. I'm more than happy to bring that back to the table or invite one of my CJSD colleagues to come along with me to provide that overview.
Is that a colleague from the custody suite people?
Yes, certainly. I'm more than happy to speak to them and provide any response that's required, or similarly invite them in.
Thank you for that, Councillor Hellier. If we were to hear from the custody suite operation.
Yes, convener, and through yourself to the Chief Superintendent, that would be very helpful. But I still feel that in the interim period, the ongoing matters that I've raised are still very much highlighted and still a problem.
Thank you for that. Ruth?
Through you, convener, I think just to clarify, Councillor Herrier's asked, I think you want the committee to raise this as an ongoing problem. I don't think it's appropriate for council officers to meet to oversee that. Of course, you can politically look at writing letters or advocating on behalf or ask for a further report to be brought back. But remember, it's the police and fire scrutiny panel or to oversee the scrutiny of the operation, and I think we're in danger there of getting into operational matters.
Councillor Hellier?
Thanks, Ruth. And if you can maybe bring the report to bring it back to us if possible.
So that would be for the police to bring back a report on use of the custody suites. Just looking at Rona, if you're happy with that.
Rona, are you happy with that suggestion that you come back with a report on the custody suite operation involving one of your colleagues in the custody suite operation?
Yeah, in terms of a report, what exactly would you be looking for? Because obviously there's been quite a lot of statistics provided already in terms of that FOI, and it's just, and I know there's been a response provided in terms of the media piece. So whatever you would be useful, I'm more than happy to provide.
Right, thank you. Ruth, what would we want?
My recommendation is to give an overview, perhaps some of the information that's already out in the public domain for the committee to have an overview of that, because maybe they haven't already seen it through other matters. So basically, it would, from what you're saying, it wouldn't be anything new. It would basically be just the committee has put in concerns about the operation of the custody suite, and this the police coming back with the facts and figures about that operation.
Okay, Rona?
Yeah, absolutely. What I'll do is I'll have a think about it once we're off table here, and I'll bring something together. But what it's more likely going to look like, I think, from my perspective, would be useful to find out what the direction of travel is to give you that reassurance in terms of moving forward. What's occurred in 2021, and thereafter we will really try and look at solutions here. I think that would be a satisfactory response to the committee.
I think it would be very useful to hear where things have been and where we're going to. I think it's obviously concerns have been expressed in the chamber here about the effect of the custody suite being closed and its effect upon the police operation within Inverclyde. I think that's your point, Councillor Hellier, and that's of great concern to us in here. And it would be good to hear about the operation of the custody suite on a regional basis. Thank you for that. Councillor Cassidy, are you finished or are you coming back in?
I've got a question on another issue, but there's two colleagues over
Yes,
there.
I know there's two there.
Who are ahead of me.
I was wanting to get you out of the way first. Councillor Armstrong and then Councillor Moran.
Thank you, convener. Through you, I just wondered, because I share a lot of concerns already expressed by other members, but obviously I'm subbing on the scrutiny panel today. Excuse me. I just wondered if it's not competent or within scope for the scrutiny panel. Presumably, my question is, would it be in scope to take a motion to full council about expressing our concerns as Inverclyde Council? If it's not within scope for the scrutiny panel, is that a possible way forward? Thank you.
Ms Binks will answer.
So it is within scope of the scrutiny panel. It's just not in the scope for officers to hold the police to account. I think, sorry if I was didn't give a clear message in that. It's just the meeting. The meeting was a request for officers to air the concerns. The scrutiny panel absolutely can, and that's what it's doing. It's due diligence now, and Rhona has committed to bringing a paper back. So it is within.
Good question, Councillor Armstrong, but the answer is no. Thank you. Councillor Moran.
I think Councillor Andrew picked up a good point here. I mean, I'm going right back here. When I brought it up to this scrutiny panel about Alicia Angelou, they said that these scrutiny panels didn't have enough opportunity to look at all the facts and figures presented and challenge them. And at one time, I said we could write to the Cabinet Secretary from here, and I was told we couldn't, but we did do it. And I think this is a blatant case again, where we should be writing the Cabinet Secretary for Justice and tell them, highlighting this position. Because if the police locally are not in a position to answer it, then ultimately they are. And I don't think it's wrong for us to instruct you, convener, to write to the Cabinet Secretary, highlighting our concerns about the custody suite within Greenock and Clydebank and Boston government, and ask for some answers. Because if it's above police Scotland's, then he is duty bound to answer it. And I'll tell you what, if it's not answered in here, there'll be other avenues that we can take to get these questions answered. Well, I think you should really be in a position to write and ask for some clarity on what's happening here. And I think well within our remit to be able to ask you to do that.
Yes, I thank you for that, Councillor Moran. I agree with you. We're faced with something here that the Chief Inspector and the Chief Superintendent have no control over it, but it's affecting our operation within Inverclyde. You make a very relevant point.
It's competent for you to write.
What?
It's competent for you to write a letter.
It's competent for me to write a letter, right? I'll write a letter. If everybody's happy with that? Happy with that online? Thank you. Councillor Mann, Councillor Armstrong. Councillor Cudley, please.
I think, yes, my concern obviously is the national, and I've obviously been able to have the advantage of being able to Google what our summary of the remit of the committee is, because I'm online. Obviously, to make representations up to national authorities is required in relation to wider scrutiny issues and concerns. So, yes, I think it is appropriate for us as a committee and you as a convener to write expressing these concerns with respect to the custody suite. I suppose just like most of the comments I was going to make have actually been out earlier, but I think it's probably, I'm getting the feeling that the National Custody Suite Organisation, whatever you want to call it, doesn't think it needs a custody suite in Greenock. Therefore, that's why it's getting closed all the time. And that would be my concern going forward with respect to any new facilities. Is effectively, it's trying to get a fait accompli with respect to any new facility in Inverclyde without having a custody suite. So yeah, I think it is important to highlight these concerns and the impact we think it's going to have in the operation of the police service in Inverclyde. So yes, I'm fully support a letter being written.
Thank you for support, Councillor Cudley. Councillor Cassidy, we're back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Chief Superintendent, obviously you mentioned in terms of the estate review, so are we any far forward in identifying a new location for Greenock Police Station?
Chief Superintendent?
Yeah, sorry, I was actually just going to come in, go back to the custody issue just for 2 seconds, if you don't mind. It's just a couple of things that just provide a little bit of context as well. There's a number of other measures now at our disposal in terms of arrests or charging or direct reporting, whatever that looks like for individuals. So the numbers going through custody just now and particularly those getting held custody for presentation at court are more than they have previously been. And that's just a side context that I'll bring in terms of more information as requested. And moving on, sorry, to that next one, in terms of the estates piece, I am hoping for something quite soon from them. The answer is no, I don't have anything definitive to give you just now. They're still very much working on some feasibility studies and options that you know, I have had initial chats with, which sound positive in relation to the Inverclyde perspective. Can't say much more than that because I wouldn't want to be disappointing anybody by raising false hope. But certainly we have some new members of staff in there who have been working very hard and dedicated to the Inverclyde picture. And it's still very much high on the priority list in terms of the estates. So I'm confident we'll have something soon, but no, nothing for just now, unfortunately.
Thank you, Chief Superintendent. Okay, Councillor Cassidy?
Yeah, thank you, Chief Superintendent, for that. I appreciate my frustration over this issue isn't directed towards you because I appreciate this is a decision at the Chief Constable level. But obviously we are now almost a year on since the consultation into the estates. This scrutiny panel requested a copy of the options appraisal to the police station. We've yet to be provided with that. We were told it was going to the Police Scotland Board and amongst all the consultation documents. That doesn't appear to be the case. We then had an estates person here the last time implying that they hadn't actually even started work on the options appraisal. We'll know that there was an article in the Telegraph fairly recently that they'd requested a copy of the options appraisal under the Freedom of Information Act. And Police Scotland rejected the request, citing that it wasn't in the public interest, which I think, quite frankly, is a joke. And I've got my frustration with this issue is just boiling over, Chair. And I think now this scrutiny panel deserves answers from a much senior level in Police Scotland and in the Scottish Government as well. So I know you are going to be writing a letter, about the custody issues. I'd like to request that maybe you write a letter to the Chief Constable and the Justice Secretary requesting that they come before this scrutiny panel to answer questions on policing in Inverclyde, not just including the future Greenock Police Station, but also these other issues that we've raised, because I really do think that it's about time that we got answers from that much senior level, and I don't believe that should be an issue of competency.
I will take advice, but I don't think I can ask the Chief Constable to come and appear here. I think I certainly can ask him what's happening with their estate. Is that a fair comment? Is that appropriate and not inappropriate?
Through your convener, yes, I agree that would be the correct approach, to certainly ask the Chief Constable to make representations to the scrutiny panel. We certainly would be in a position to request the Chief Constable personally attend. I
will sort out something, Councillor Cassidy. Thank you. Councillor Haley, are you coming back in again?
Thanks, convener. Yeah, if you give me just the offer here. It's just what the Chief Superintendent Fraser said there about reporting procedures. Yeah, I'm fully aware that reporting procedures now are available and it doesn't always have to result in any person going into custody. So really what to just bring that question forward would be that when we do get to the point that we have alternative accommodation and we have police custody cells, I'm just wondering, how do you decide on how many custody cells will be made available? Who makes that decision? Is it an operational decision, or is it going to be once again put on to the estates who really have no idea as to how policing takes place?
Chief Superintendent?
I'm sorry, I'm probably just going to have to clarify the question there. So was it once we have a solution or a custody solution that you've spoken about in terms of our estates piece, how is it decided how many cells or what the capacity is? Was that the question?
Yeah, Chief Superintendent, just how we make that decision as to how many cells we would have here and who makes the decision.
Yeah, so that would so I'm not involved in the decisions around estates other than the what we need personally from a divisional estate perspective. But the custody is going to be very firmly based on stats. So everybody that comes through, where they're from, and how many and at what periods of the day and week, and what our peak capacity looks like in that regard, because we've got quite a number of cells within Greenock, and I can tell you that they are not always full. So I don't expect, you know, any solution to look as if, you know, if it remains within right where it is, if it would, for argument's sake, to remain where it is, then I wouldn't expect there to be as many cells, just purely because they're very rarely full. Occasionally they are, but not always. So that will be based on stats and actually what the requirement is, so that we're making best use of the you know, the funds that we have available, and that they're in the right place for the numbers. But I don't have those to hand specifically. That's going to have to be a question that I push back to Estates and Custody Division to find that out. But assuming it's within the realms of feasibility to share that, then I'm more than happy to do so.
Okay, Councillor Hellier.
Thanks, Convener. Just one last point. Yeah, I just want to make sure that stats don't disappear into the realities. Thanks.
Thank you. Last one.
Yeah, we will be supplying obviously our the narrative around that in terms of transportation and what that looks like for, you know, peak hours versus the middle of the night, etc., etc. But certainly we have an input in terms of what that piece might look like for us, but the stats will ultimately drive any decisions on size and capacity within the custody suite, because that's the reliable information. But certainly it will not go without a voice in this.
Thank you for that. I'm going to take Councillor Jackson. Councillor Cassidy, if you don't mind.
I'm actually just going to change the subject. If Paul's got something relevant to this.
It's another subject as well.
Right, okay. It's just a couple of comments. David is when I'm looking at, I really welcome the fall in violent crime among young people.
Could you put the microphone closer to your mouth?
David, it's to welcome the fall in crime, violent crime amongst young people. It's to thank our education system for all the work they're doing to drive that. And
Good.
Nice campaign as well. I think over the years we're starting to see the effects that this is having, and it's good to see the numbers going down. One of the other things I wanted to comment on was the ongoing, you know, domestic abuse. We just kind of seem to get these numbers down. And I'm going to be able to like a term to funding. And we're talking about funding costs in police and fire services. Well, we know that a lot of women are trapped in harmful relationships because of poverty and they can't escape, and that's why just to add how important that is that we fund areas like Women's Aid. At the minute we're seeing possibly Clydebank's Women's Aid is going to have to close because of budget cuts, which will have an absolutely devastating effect on women and the children in these relationships. So it's just to highlight the need that we should be funding these areas properly. The only other comment I was going to make is on the ones on race hate crimes. And I know I've got to be really careful what I say here, but I don't believe for a minute that everybody is a racist community. But with what's going on nationally, I think we within the council have a job to do to put up information against the misconceptions which are going around your communities about what people are getting for nothing and about you know, public services and what's costing and what's costing not. We know we have what Nigerian community over here on 5-year sponsorship, who are paying their own way. A lot of them are taking on jobs, paying tax, paying national insurance, being good citizens, who are being racially abused. And I think it's within this council we need to stand up and say loudly, we are proud to have these people here in our community. And we absolutely abhor that hate. What's going on, the abuse that we're getting within this community. So I just want to make a couple of statements.
No,
that's okay.
I think your comment here is important, and I'm sure that Inspector Fletcher will have something to add to that when he does his presentation on hate crime. But certainly there is no doubt that the Nigerians that we do see in our company, in our community, many of them are doing jobs in the care sector, which is really keeping that care sector going. It really is, and they're making an important contribution. I'm going to go to Councillor Cassidy for his last question. I've been very generous today, Councillor Cassidy.
Thank you, Chair. Chief Superintendent, it's a question on alcohol test purchasing. A recent licensing board meeting, the licensing board reviewed the Chief Constable's annual report. And in the report, it kind of implied that test purchasing was happening within Inverclyde. But upon me asking some questions around that, I understand right that there hasn't been any test purchasing going on, not just within Inverclyde, but within the entire division. So I'm just kind of wanting to understand what is the issues around test purchasing and what is being done to overcome the issues that you appear to be having.
Chief Inspector, Chief Superintendent, who wants to handle that?
Okay.
Thank you.
There is test purchasing activity that's going on. I don't have the facts and figures for you today. I can come back to you. We've worked quite closely with the regimes team as well when it comes to test purchasing and the monitoring of certain premises who we believe maybe supplying or selling either alcohol or some vape selling. Vapes has been one of the issues we've had recently. Some shops in the local community that both Regina and I work together with our target so we can test purchasing system. If you look for specific deployments, specific statistics about that, I can say we get anything back to you. But it's a useful tool which we have.
Okay, Councillor Cassidy.
That.
Thank you. That's good. Right. Oh, Councillor Moran.
Thanks. Just go back to the agenda, and it's the weapon offences. It says that there's been an increase of 7.5, but obviously we're going into schools, and prevention, talking better lives, no nice better lives. And the reason I'm asking this because when this initially was brought in, I was the convener at Safe Sustainable Communities. And then Cabinet Secretary Kenny McCaskill down here and we launched it.
I was your vice chair.
Yeah, well, what I'm bringing this, I'm really disappointed that we're seeing an increase again in this type of offence. So, suppose my question to the police company would be, how successful this No Nice Better Life campaign has been, and is there any data to support it? Because obviously, if there's an increase, then maybe it's not working, and maybe we'll look at a different vehicle for Dawn.
Chief Inspector.
I'm not aware of any data specifically for No Nice Better Life. It's an education piece delivered mainly through the Education Authority, supported by the police. And as we spoke before at committee meetings, we have procedures in place for searching of children at school if required to do so. If specific intelligence child would be carrying a knife, education pass information to us and vice versa. We can make sure that child search the knife is seized. The increase in offensive weapons seizures can also be put down to proactivity by the police. We're simply doing more stop and searches in the right areas, at the right time, the right people. And it won't always be youths that we're taking weapons from. And the No Nice Better Lives is an initiative to target youth offending as opposed to adult offending. But it's certainly a valuable point. And if there is any statistics around about it, we'll try and get you. But I think Ruth's going to come in with them.
Ruth?
Through you, Convener, not aware of any statistics around it, but very aware of the fact that it's new groups of young people that we need to be engaging with all of the time, and these things can tend to go in trends as well. So I don't think there's ever a case for taking our eye off the ball or not giving the young people those messages, especially at that key age between the ages of sort of S2 to S5 as well. So I don't think it's the fact that the messaging isn't getting through. I think it's the fact that we just need to keep repeating it again and again and again.
That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I remember it well. And when the first thing did was paint a big bureau side the wall on Common Road where a young person gets stabbed and everyone lying there in the community was up in arms about the whole bloody thing. So, I mean, it's really good that it's ongoing, and it'd be interesting to see just how successful it's been, and maybe you could get or members of the education, I don't know, but it'd be interesting to find out.
Ruth has got to leave to chair another meeting. Thank you, Ruth, for your help today. Rona, I see you wanting to come in again.
Yeah, I was just going to come in very quickly on that and just reiterate what Ruth had said about not taking our eye off the ball, and 100% that is the space we're in just now in terms of prevention and some of the campaigns that we have locally and nationally, help from Violence Reduction Unit. We've had recently our officers attend a youth violence forum at Jackton, which I raised with some of our colleagues here, but actually it was a West-based forum to discuss some of the issues that we've been discussing here today and how we get into that arena and really make a difference. Also, there's the Fearless campaign, there's mentorship, there's a number of really high profile prevention opportunities that we've been using. It's really, really challenging to work out quantifiably what that does for us statistically in terms of prevention. We are using our stop search powers appropriately, intelligence-led, making sure we're in the right place at the right time, and that has led to some very good detections for us. And as we know, if we take a knife off somebody, that is, I'd like to think, preventing somebody being injured or killed later on in the evening, or that young person having had it taken off them and used against them, which is also something that happens. So we're doing our best to try and focus not just the prevention opportunity, but some of the disruption tactics that we've got at our disposal as well. So while a rise in these crimes is never welcome in any way, we are working very closely with a number of partners locally and nationally to try and impact and influence that figure.
Thank you for that, Rona. I see no more hands anywhere. We now move on to agenda item number 4 under new business, a presentation by Police Scotland, the Hate Crime Inspector Fletcher. The floor is yours. Thank you for waiting so patiently.
Convener, could I just intervene and ask for a rest period for 5 minutes?
Yeah.
It's a medical issue.
Yes, certainly. Yes. Are we back on recording? Thank you. Inspector Fletcher, again, the floor is yours. Oh, he's taking the 5 minutes.
I've never seen that.
Right. Everybody do. Everybody. Right.
Police should have implemented that. Since I just comfortably sometimes. Yeah.
We are ready to go whenever you are, Inspector.
Thank you, Convener. That's very much appreciated. And my apologies again for not being in person. Thursday, my wife works late and I need to pick the little one up from nursery. So my sincerest apologies. So yeah, good afternoon. My name is Michael Fletcher. I'm one of the policing inspectors within the Equality and Diversity Department within Policing Together. And I say it's a pleasure to be here to speak to everybody. As a slight caveat just in regards to any questions, we have, for use of a better word, specialists, which we call hate crime advisors, and that when it comes to dealing with the more specific and more nuanced hate crime element. So I run the team, but I am not one yet. I'm doing the courses as we speak. So if there are any questions that I'm not sure about, then I will certainly find the answer and get back to you. So I'm hoping everybody can see the screen. There's quite a lot of slides, but it's very quick. It's more just for visual aids. So I'm going to talk briefly about what a hate crime is, cover the new or not so new Hate Crime and Public Order Scotland Act, and touch briefly on non-crime hate incidents. And I'm kind of hoping that my input will dispel any myths around the new legislation, as I know it caused quite a bit of controversy when it went live. And in my opinion, it was more misunderstandings than anything else. So this is what we at Police Scotland use to define what a hate crime is. So it's any crime motivated wholly or partly by malice and ill will, hostility or prejudice, based on one or more actual or perceived characteristics. So probably the best way to try and explain this is I'm going to break it down into its component parts and talk through each element. But as an aside, you'll see we've got malice and ill will, and we've also got brackets, hostility or prejudice. So the hostility and prejudice part was included due to recommendations made by the College of Policing, who cover England and Wales, and also Lord Brackadale's review. But the legislation itself implemented in the Hate Crime and Public Order Act using malice and ill will. So we just included both just to try and make the definition more accessible. So break it down. So any crime can be a hate crime. So what separates a crime from a hate crime is motivation. But our starting point is that a crime has been committed. So what can a hate crime look like? Threats, verbal abuse, abusive text messages, assaults, theft, robberies, vandalisms. And really the point I'm trying to make and show is that any crime can be a hate crime, just depending on why it was done. So we now move on to the crux of what a hate crime is. It's the motivation behind the crime being committed, which needs to be driven ultimately by hate. So when officers are investigating a hate crime, we will look at the who, the why, and the what. So who perceives the incident to be motivated by malice and ill will? Is it the victim, a witness, a family member? Now that gives us a starting point that this may be a hate crime. And then we need to look at the why. So why do they perceive the incident to be motivated by malice and ill will? So when you report a crime, officers may ask you this, and it's not because they don't believe you or believe members of the community. They need to explore what about this crime could potentially make it a hate crime. So sometimes obvious, there's words or phrases used, but sometimes it might be less obvious. and that is what the officer will want to explore during the investigation. So probably an example would be, so me, Michael Fletcher, my car has been vandalised and I believe it to be a hate crime. So the officer may ask me why. So my car is the only car that's damaged. It's happened on a number of occasions, and I am the only English person on the streets, and I've been having issues with my neighbours. So we look at this evidence, we could potentially have a hate crime, and that will be fully explored. But if we add on that, following in the investigation, it turns out I owed money to someone and I hadn't paid it back. But this is the reason for my car being damaged. So we still have a crime, but we just might not have a hate crime. So we look at the motivation for that crime being committed. And then lastly, we look at what impact has the incident had or likely to have on the individual or the wider community. So the impact itself is not necessary to establish hate, and in some cases there might not be any obvious impact on the victim. But when we're reporting cases, we need to let the fiscal know the damage that's been done. What may appear to be on the lower end of offending when it comes to the hate crime can have a rippling effect across the community. So that's something we will draw out and we will pass on to Procurator Fiscal. So the last part of the definition is the actual or perceived characteristics. So you'll see there 7. So these are the characteristics that are protected by the legislation. So it's age, disability, race, religion, sexual orientation, transgender identity, and variations in sex characteristics. So prior to the 1st of April 2024, we only had 5 protected characteristics, but age and variations in sex characteristics have now been added. Although VSC, so variations in sex characteristics, was covered by transgender identity, but they have now been separated to its own category. Probably one thing to note as well, sex is currently under consultation to be added into the legislation. So the misogyny bill that Scottish Government looking at has been delayed. So they're now consulting on adding sex into the hate crime public order. I don't have any timeframes of when this become live, but it's at the consultation phase with partners at the moment. So I hope that makes sense. And again, in summary, a hate crime is a crime that's driven or motivated by hatred towards one of the protected characteristics. So probably the best way to look at this is let's have a look at an example. So a really simple, basic example. A man is leaving a well-known city centre nightclub and he is followed for a period of time by 2 people who shout homophobic slurs at him. So he reports this to the police. So if we use the who, the why, and the what, so we look at the perception of the victim. So they were calling me names widely understood to be slurs towards gay men. I believe they targeted me because they saw me leaving an LGBT plus nightclub and assumed I was gay. We then look at the behaviour of the offender. So the language used by the perpetrator indicates that they perceived the victim to be gay and targeted him for this reason. So we go back to the definition. Our baseline crime is a section 38 of the Criminal Justice and Licensing Scotland Act, which ultimately breached the peace. And then we add the hate crime element. That's section 1 of the hate crime public order. I'll touch on the section briefly shortly, which makes it a hate crime due to the motivation of the victim's sexuality or perceived sexuality. And that is a really important thing to note, that you don't need to be a member of that community or a protected group for it to be a hate crime. So in this example, the sexuality of the victim is completely irrelevant. The fact that he was targeted because because the offender thought he was gay is enough to make it a hate crime. So I'll pause quickly, actually, if there's any questions. We're covering a few little bits, so I'll pause quickly just if there's any quick questions on this section, on the definition element.
Inspector, I don't see any questions on the screen. I see none in the room. You carry on, please.
Thank you very much. Brilliant. So now that we've covered on what hate crime is, I'm going to touch on, say, the new. It's not new. It's over a year old now. But the Hate Crime and Public Order Scotland Act. So that went live in April of last year, 2024, and there was a lot of controversy when this initially went live. But ultimately, it was just a consolidatory piece of legislation. So it brought all the legislation which were in different acts in Scots law under one umbrella, and it was ultimately brought about after Lord Brackendale did a review of hate crime in Scotland which he undertook in 2018. And my colleague summed it up perfectly when he says that everything has changed and nothing has changed. So what was a crime before the start of April 2024 is still a crime. It's just that we are recording it differently. So you'll see on the screen the 4 main sections that we as the police will regularly use is Section 1 of the Hate Crime Public Order Act. This is mostly used by officers and is what generally makes a crime into a hate crime. Ultimately, when it comes to recording and charging somebody. So when we have an assault, and if after investigation it's deemed to be a hate crime, the offender will be charged with an assault and what we call a Section 1 aggravator, which highlights to the fiscal that this crime has been motivated by hate. Section 3 is just a carbon copy of the legislation we already had. It was just brought under the Hate Crime Public Order Act, and it's in regards to racially aggravated harassment. So Section 4, stirring up a hatred, and this is what caused much of the controversy in the media when it went live. I think as much as Elon Musk was commenting on it, and I heard on a number of American podcasts as well. So prior to the Hate Crime Act, we only had the stirring up of racial hatred under the Public Order Act. So this protection through the Hate Crime Public Order Act is now extended to all 7 characteristics to give them that additional protection. But there were concerns raised during the consultation phase that this might have quote, a chilling effect on freedom of expression. So this Section 4 goes hand in hand with Section 9, of the Act, which is in regards to, as you see on the screen, protection of freedom of expression. So Section 9 allows for, certainly when it comes to stirring up of hatred, it allows for discussion or criticism, and even as far as expressions of antipathy, dislike, ridicule, or insult without it meeting a criminal threshold. So I'm not going to go into huge detail on this, as the kind of stirring up hatred element can get quite complex, but ultimately it's a 2-part test. The first part is the offence requires that the behaviour is of such that a reasonable person would consider threatening and abusive. And the second part is intention. So there needs to be an intention for that individual to stir up hatred towards a protected group. If we meet part 1, but not part 2, we still have a crime. It just might not be the stirring up of hatred. So that is a super whistle-stop tour of the Hate Crime Public Order Act. I'm going to very, very briefly touch on non-crime hate incidents, and this is very, very quick. I know it's been in the media recently about Police Scotland storing details of individuals in regards to ultimately what is a non-criminal offence. So I thought I'd very, very quickly touch on this to try and give some comfort that there are checks and balances in place, that we are not just recording people's details on police systems when a crime hasn't been committed. So you'll see there that a non-crime hate incident is defined as any incident where a crime has not been committed, but where there is perceived by the reporter or any other person that the incident was motivated wholly or partly by malice and ill will, based on one or more of the actual or perceived characteristics. So as a bit of kind of history, non-crime hate recording has developed over time, but was initially started following a recommendation from the Stephen Lawrence inquiry, which called for a comprehensive system of reporting and recording of all racist incidents and crimes. So since then, we've had other tragic instances such as Fiona Pilkington and Benjamin Ibrahimi, and recording non-crime hate incidents goes some way to try and identify and support those who need it. But as we said, we need checks and balances. So we need to have reasons to record non-crime hate incidents and people's details. So we have a 2-principle test that officers need to follow for the recording, or to justify the recording of a non-crime hate incident. So as you see on the screen, a reasonable person considers the report to be motivated by malice and ill will towards one or more of the characteristics protected with the legislation, but the recording has a specific policing purpose. And the examples you'll see there, protecting life and property, detection of crime, etc. But over and above that, we also ask officers to consider a number of different things. So would the behaviour complained of be covered under freedom of expression? Is there any potential for escalation? So that's quite a big one. We often talk about the drip effect when it comes to hate crime, that when somebody reports something to the police, it may be have been happening over a course of periods. And while it might not hit those criminal thresholds, it can help us protect that victim by recording it. And if there is a pattern of behaviour, then we can start to intervene. Do we have any safeguarding responsibilities? And lastly, is the report made obviously vexatious or hoax? So we also need to look at that element as well, because sometimes people will try to weaponise the law in a negative way. So ultimately, what we're trying to get to cops and to give you some comfort is that we record non-crime incidents, non-crime hate incidents when they need to be and for the right reasons, which is ultimately to protect people. That has been a whistle-stop tour of hate crime, non-crime hate incidents, and the Hate Crime and Public Order Act. I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm happy to try and take any questions if anybody's got any. Thank you for your time.
Well, thank you, Inspector, for the content of your presentation and for moving through it so quickly. We do appreciate that. My immediate thought is for Chief Inspector Doherty and Chief Superintendent Fraser that your force is going to have to deal with this and handle it. As I read through it and listen to you, I don't think I could explain the whys and wherefores of hate law. So I wish you all the very best, both of you, in the task you've been given with this hate crime report. Colleagues, do we have any questions for Inspector Fletcher? No, I see no questions. Thank you very much, Inspector. You're free to go now, if you so desire.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Move on now to new business, agenda item number 5, local police and fire and scrutiny panel update. Ross, thank you.
Thank you, yeah, so the report updates the panel on Police Scotland and Scottish Fire and Rescue Service activities, both locally and nationally, and this paper additionally seeks approval for the draft response to Scottish Fire and Rescue Services delivery review consultation. In terms of Police Scotland updates, the report contains several highlights around police initiatives, reviews, events and operations, in particular within Greenock, an operation that involved significant seizure of cannabis and arresting of 5 men. For Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, they were noting that they've published their new strategy for 2025-2028, but I'd like to draw your attention to Section 7 of the report, which would be the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service consultation and the draft response to that consultation, which has been produced in collaboration with elected members. So the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service are undergoing a service delivery review to modernise and also address financial and operational pressures. The consultation proposed 2 options which impact Clyde, particularly Greenock and Glasgow fire stations. Option 1 is to replace the second full-time appliance at Greenock with a dedicated high-reach appliance, which has been a temporary measure since 2023 already. Option 2 implements that same change from option 1, but also introduces a new duty system for fire appliances in Greenock and Glasgow. In Greenock, the current on-call appliance will now be used by full-time firefighters during daytime hours, and thereafter relying on on-call firefighters. In Port Glasgow, the whole-time appliance would change to a mixture of daytime firefighters and then on-call outside of day shift hours. I won't go through the whole response, but in summary, the Council draft response does not support either option. While the Council acknowledges the need for efficiency and modernisation in Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, there is an overwhelming concern amongst members that option 2 in particular could lead to increased response times in the evening and overnight due to limited on-call firefighter availability. The Council's response also stresses that changes must consider Inverclyde-specific risks, including industrial and deprivation profile. But in summary, council's preference is to maintain the current 24/7 full-time cover in the area and the resource situation until more robust evidence-based proposal was presented.
Thank you, Ross. We have any questions for Ross? Councillor Moran?
Just a one, Tina, thank you. It's about the dog season in Greenock, you know, and the last one's in Clarence Street. Before that, we had one up at the car park in West York Street. We had one up the deaf school in York Road, and it seemed to be high profile buildings. It's not as if they're out the sticks, you know. So my question would be, supposed to police and the fire, how many checks are carried out in these buildings that are lying dormant? Because these people seem to get access to them quite easily and convert into these farms quite easily as well. So what kind of steps do we take to make sure it doesn't happen? You know, is it people who rent these premises out and they cover for letting them out to these people, or are they just lying empty and they just manage to get in and take over them? I mean, that's quite high profile dog seeders and very high profile areas. It's not as if it's in the countryside, although it is somewhere. So it just kind of a wee update what we do to stop this, if we stop it.
Oh, a good question. I'm not sure who should answer it.
Certainly some of the drug seizures you mentioned there, they're a combination of properties that have been broken into by individuals and then used for the cultivation of cannabis. And you're right, some of them are rented out on a tenancy agreement with a landlord. The landlords have been doing their due diligence to check those premises to make sure they've been used for the purpose they're rented for. Quite often that doesn't happen. Then the landlord has a deniability that they knew nothing of what was going on there because they had to check it themselves. I think it goes back to licensing issue for the landlord. Some of the buildings have been quite surprising, quite high profile. There was one above Farm Foods in Port Glasgow a few months ago, and it was actually the Farm Foods warehouse, the storehouse above, that just hadn't used a number of years, broken into via another premises, and had been getting used for months before the Farm Foods staff discovered that something in the building above them. How we would go about checking these buildings on a regular basis that lie empty, I honestly don't know. It's not something the police could resource anyway to check these buildings. Possibly buildings owned by the council, if they were being utilised for them, could be checked, but it wouldn't be for me to suggest that. But I do take it forward.
You know, I mean, we're not without sin myself, because the deaf school York Road, I think, the council building.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Chief Inspector. Any other questions? Councillor Cassidy.
Yeah, comment on that question. I just want to thank officers for putting together the response and the fire service consultation. I think it's been quite good to get a cross-party view on it, and I agree position between all of us. I think it's a really robust response to it. My question is more on another issue. A number of months back, I raised some concerns on the board about the data that we get when we compare the data from Police Scotland to the fire service, and the fire service being able to break it down via ward, and we don't have that level of data when it comes to Police Scotland. So therefore it kind of hampers a bit of the ability to scrutinise the impacts within our own wards. And I know that officers did say they were going to go back and have what could be done around this. So maybe just a request that we maybe have something back from the next scrutiny panel about what can be done on that.
Through your convener, yeah, apologies for that oversight, and we will work with Police Scotland to see what we can actually achieve with, to see if we can get more ward-based data. And we'll set up a separate meeting with Police Scotland to see if that's possible.
Okay, Paul?
Yes.
Right. Colleagues, I don't see any questions on the screen and none in the room. At point 2, we are asked to note the current and emerging local and national issues relating to police and fire and rescue matters, and approve the response to SFRS consultation on service delivery review options which impact Greenock and Port Glasgow. Are we happy with these 2 points? Agreed. Thank you very much. That concludes the meeting. Thank you to the police and the fire service. It's been a longer day today. Thank you to my colleagues for some wonderful questioning today, which I think is so important. We're here to scrutinise, and I think we did that today. Thank you very much.